Hey third graders, this is Miss Drewery again. I'm here to finish reading chapter 3 of Ramona Quimby, age 8. So I'm going to do a quick refresher of what we read yesterday. So Ramona had taken a hard-boiled egg to school in her lunchbox. Not because she liked hard-boiled eggs, because she really didn't. It was a fad at that time, something that was very popular. All the third graders were doing it. The reason they liked to bring these hard-boiled eggs to school is because they could crack them on their heads. Well, Ramona cracked her egg on her head and realized that her mom had put in a raw egg instead of a hard-boiled egg. So she had quite a mess in the cafeteria. So someone was asked to take her to the office, and so that's where we're going to begin. Mrs. Larsen, the school secretary, took one look at Ramona, sprang from her desk, and said, "Well, you need a little help, don't you?" Ramona nodded, grateful to Mrs. Larsen for behaving as if eggy third graders walked into her office every day. The secretary led her into a tiny room equipped with a cot, wash basin, which is a sink, and a toilet that adjoined the office. "Let's see," said Mrs. Larsen. "How shall we go about this? I guess the best way is to wash your hands and then dunk your head. You've heard of egg shampoos, haven't you? They are supposed to be wonderful for the hair." "Yow!" yelped Ramona when she dipped her head into the wash basin. "That water's cold." "It's probably a good thing we don't have warmer water," said Mrs. Larsen. "You wouldn't want to cook the egg in your hair, would you?" She rubbed and Ramona snuffled. She rinsed and Ramona sniffed. Finally, Mrs. Larsen said, "That's the best I can do," and handed Ramona a wad of paper towels. "Dry yourself off the best you can," she said. "You can wash your hair when you get home." Ramona accepted the towels. As she sat on the cot, rubbing and blotting and seething in humiliation and anger, she listened to sounds from the office, the click of the typewriter, the ring of the telephone, Mrs. Larsen's voice answering. Ramona began to calm down and feel a little better. Maybe Mrs. Kemp would let her wash her hair after school. She could let Willa Jean pretend to be working in a beauty shop and not say anything about her sustained silent reading. One of these days, Willa Jean was sure to catch on that she was just reading a book, and Ramona wanted to postpone that time as long as possible. Toward the end of lunch period, Ramona heard teachers drift into the office to leave papers or pick up messages from their boxes. And then Ramona made an interesting discovery. Teachers talked about their classes. "My class has been so good today," said one teacher. "I can hardly believe it. They're little angels." "I don't know what's the matter with my class today," said another. "Yesterday they knew how to subtract, and today none of them seems to be able to remember." "Perhaps it's the weather," suggested another teacher. Ramona found all this conversation most interesting. She had blotted her hair as best she could when she heard Mrs. Whaley's big, cheerful voice speaking to Mrs. Larsen. "Here are those tests I was supposed to hand in yesterday," she said. "Sorry I'm late," Mrs. Larsen murmured in answer. Then Mrs. Whaley said, "I hear my little show-off came in with egg in her hair." She laughed and added, "What a nuisance." Ramona was so stunned she did not try to hear Mrs. Larsen's answer. Show-off? Nuisance? Did Mrs. Whaley think she had broken a raw egg into her hair on purpose to show off? And to be called a nuisance by her teacher when she was not a nuisance? Or was she? Ramona did not mean to break an egg in her hair. Her mother was to blame. Did this accident make her a nuisance? Ramona did not see why Mrs. Whaley could think she was a nuisance when Mrs. Whaley was not the one to get her hands all eggy. Yet Ramona had heard her say right out loud she was a show-off and a nuisance. That hurt, really hurt. Ramona sat as still as she could with the damp paper towels in her hands. She did not want to risk even the softest noise by throwing them into the wastebasket. Lunch period came to an end, and still she sat. Her body felt numb, and so did her heart. She could never, never face Miss Whaley again. Never. Mrs. Larsen's typewriter clicked cheerfully away. Ramona was forgotten, which was the way she wanted it. She even wanted to forget herself and her horrible hair, now drying into stiff spikes. She no longer felt like a real person. The next voice Ramona heard was that of Yard Ape. "Mrs. Larsen, he said as if he'd been running in the hall. "Mrs. Whaley said to tell you Ramona didn't come back after lunch." The typing stopped. "Oh, my goodness," said Mrs. Larsen as she appeared in the doorway. "Why, Ramona, are you still here?" How was Ramona supposed to answer? "Run along back to class with Danny," said the secretary. "I'm sorry, I forgot all about you." "Do I have to?" asked Ramona. "Of course," said Mrs. Larsen. "Your hair's almost dry. You don't want to miss class." Ramona did want to miss class. Forever. The third grade was spoiled forever. "Aw, come on, Ramona," said Yard Ape, for once not teasing. Surprised by sympathy from Yard Ape, Ramona reluctantly left the office. She expected him to go on ahead of her, but instead he walked beside her, as if they were friends instead of rivals. Ramona felt strange walking down the hall alone with a boy. As she trudged along beside him, she felt she had to tell someone the terrible news. "Mrs. Whaley doesn't like me," she said in a flat voice. "Don't let old Mrs. Whaley get you down," he answered. "She likes you okay. You're a good kid." Ramona was a little shocked at hearing her teacher called Old Whaley. However, she squeezed comfort from Yard Ape's opinion. She began to like him, really like him. When they reached their classroom, Yard Ape, perhaps thinking he had been too nice to Ramona, turned and said to her with his old grin, "Egghead." Oh! There was nothing for Ramona to do but follow him into the room. Sustained silent reading, or DEAR, as Mrs. Whaley called it, was over, and class was practicing writing cursive capital letters. Mrs. Whaley was describing capital M as she wrote it on the board. Swoop down, swoop up, down, up again, and down. Ramona avoided looking at her teacher as she got out paper and pencil and began to write the capital letters of the alphabet in careful, even script. She enjoyed the work, and it soothed her hurt feelings until she came to the letter Q. Ramona sat looking at the cursive capital Q, the first letter of her last name. Ramona had always been fond of Q, the only letter of the alphabet with a neat little tail. She enjoyed printing Q, but she did not like her cursive Q. She had made it right, but it looked like a big floppy 2, which Ramona felt was a dumb way to make such a nice letter. Ramona decided right then and there that she would never again write a cursive Q. She would write the rest of her last name, Wimby, in cursive. But she would always, no matter what Mrs. Whaley said, print her capital Qs. "So there, Mrs. Whaley," thought Ramona, "you can't make me write a cursive Q if I don't want to." She began to feel like a real person again. All right, so tomorrow we will begin chapter 4. It's called The Quimby's Quarrel. A quarrel is another word for an argument or a disagreement. All right, so yesterday we did a little experiment with an egg. And so our question was, can I remove the shell without cracking the egg? And so my hypothesis, what I thought was, I think I can remove the shell with vinegar, which is an acid. And we talked about an acid yesterday being corrosive, where it can eat away certain things. The stronger the acid, the more it would do that. Vinegar is a kind of acid, but it's a milder acid, so we can have vinegar in our foods. You use vinegar to make pickles. You use vinegar when you color your Easter eggs. All right, so we put a raw egg inside 2 cups of vinegar. And yesterday when we did that, the vinegar was clear, almost like water. The egg was just white and smooth. But now if you'll look at the camera up closely, you can see that there are bubbles at the top. Their bubbles are covered on the egg and at the top of the vinegar. These bubbles are carbon dioxide. That is the same thing that you see at the top of a soda. Those bubbles are. The carbon dioxide is released as this vinegar is breaking down the eggshell. This eggshell is made out of something called calcium carbonate. And so as I fill this eggshell, well, it's kind of hard for me to fill it through the bag, so let me take it out. Oh my. All right, so as you look at this egg, it probably, looks just like a normal egg to you with the little bubbles on it. But you can see I'm mashing it, and it's no longer hard, it's soft. and rubbery. I'm going to leave it soaking in this vinegar for a few more days. We'll continue looking at it and see if it makes any more changes. All right. Thank you for watching my video, and be sure and come back tomorrow and we will read chapter 4 and examine our egg again.